Okay, I can get that out the way. And can everybody see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
All
sir.
right.
Yes, sir.
Seem like it's coming from Pluto.
Sometimes I don't know where these thoughts are coming from. All right, family. So today, let me change this so I can see everybody on the other computer. Okay, so I can see everyone's smiling faces. There we go. Okay. The concept today is fractions being used as a demo kit. Will be divided into two parts. God willing, part one, we're going to deal with the background information about fractions and what they're composed of, what they represent from a mathematical perspective. We are going to use them as a demo kit to understand Dianetics, and we're going to use them as a demo kit to understand ourselves a little bit better and the way our mind operates. And then God willing, next Wednesday, we're going to get into the specifics of fractions, how to simplify them, how to perform the operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, finding the lowest common denominators of fractions, and how we can use that to understand the tech, our Islam, and ourselves. How does that sound? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
At any time, if you don't understand a concept, please stop me. I want to make sure that the gradient isn't too steep, and I want to make sure there's no misunderstoods. And I don't want to go past something that someone does not understand. And keep in mind, the question that you might have might be a question that there's others in the room that may also have those questions. And as in the military and in school, I was always told that the dumb question is the one you don't answer, you don't ask. So please ask your questions first, because really when you deal with fractions from one perspective, a fraction is a type of equation, okay? Significance of equations. Now, this is just kind of like laying a foundation. In our Islam, if you look at the word parable in Arabic, the word parable is synonymous with demo kit. Okay. Parable is synonymous with demo kit. The word parable in Arabic means, the root word is methala. Okay, methala. And it means, one of the meanings of the word methala means to represent as a picture, which means it's being represented in 2 dimensions, to represent as a sculpture, which represents 3 dimensions, or to represent graphically, which we could say is to represent something mathematically. Okay. And if you understand what a demo kit is the same concept from the perspective of the study tech from the Church of Scientology. When you go into what's called the student hat study technology, one of the things that L. Ron Hubbard states is that if you can't represent a word, if you can't represent the word using mass, then you don't understand the word. That's number one. Number two, he says, if you can't put a concept into your own language, you don't understand that concept. And he talks about what's called the glib student. Has anyone ever heard that term, glib student?
Yes.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
No, sir. No.
Okay, the word glib, if you look at the word glib student is an individual that knows how to memorize information in order to pass a test. And then soon thereafter, passing the test, they don't really know the information. They just knew how to memorize it in order to answer questions on the test. Okay, it's like going to school for 4 years to get a degree, and then after you get your degree, you don't remember none of the stuff that you learned in school. So you just have a piece of paper that cost you $40,000 to $50,000.
Perfect.
You could have easily printed off something like that at Home Depot for $4 to change. Okay, and I, you know, I'm gonna use myself as an example. There are some courses when I looked at my transcript, because I'm currently back in school again, and when I looked at the courses on my transcript, some of the courses I don't even remember taking them. I don't even remember taking these classes. And there's one class I remember taking in white collar crime. And out of the whole semester, I only remember one quote. I don't even remember the name of the professor who taught the course. Okay. I just remember one quote from the class. And the quote involves the concept of statistics. And the quote is this, that statistics are like a bikini. They reveal what's interesting, but they conceal what's vital.
Yes.
In other words, you can manipulate statistics to say whatever you want them to say.
Good analogy. Good analogy.
Statistics can be used to reveal information, but statistics can also be used to hide information if you know how to manipulate the statistics. And so I paid for that course, those courses, that whole semester. So that quote might have costed me $8,000. I don't know. Okay. Oh, Brother Wahid, assalamu alaikum, sir. I saw you come in. I know you're with us.
Wa alaikum salam, my dear brother and family.
Alaikum salam, brother.
Thankful to have
you
you,
all.
brother. Yes, sir.
Love you all. Good to be had.
Me too. And who else? Brother Martin. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Martin.
Wa alaikum salam, sir, and family.
How are you, good brother?
I am well, sir. Praise be to Allah.
Yes, sir. Okay, so significance of equations. So since a parable is a fictitious story that illustrates a moral, religious, or spiritual principle, the same could be said for mathematics, physics, and science. How so? An equation can be seen as a principle stated in the language of numbers and symbols that also illustrates a moral or spiritual principle. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So an equation is a parable written in the language of symbols. And this parable, this equation is actually a communication. Everyone can please go on mute so we don't have that background information, background noise. Thank you. So an equation is like a parable. Okay. And equations are used to describe the unseen phenomena of the universe. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the universe represents the mind of Allah, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if the universe represents the mind of Allah, then everything in the universe represents a demo kit that Allah uses to communicate moral, religious, and spiritual principles through the language of numbers and symbols, correct?
Yes, I can see that.
Okay. From closing the gap, go ahead, Brother Wadud.
Yes, sir. One quick question.
Yes, sir.
As you said that about equations,
Mm-hmm.
are all equations, or do all equations have an equal sign in them?
Good question. The basics of an equation, if you look at the word equate, an equation, a basic equation is made of what's called two mathematical expressions. So a mathematical expression may not have an equation in it. So if I just said 3x plus 2, that's a mathematical expression. As soon as you use the word equation, you're saying that this expression is equal to something else.
Okay. So does that mean that, as you were saying, that equations can represent natural phenomenon in the universe? Then the word balance came into my mind, that principle is underlying everything, the principle of balance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For
That was.
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, brother.
No, that was it. Thank
you. Okay, yes, sir. And you spoke of the word balance. It reminded me of in chemistry, we had to balance equations. You had to make sure the molecule, the number of atoms on the one side were equal to the number of atoms on the other. If you look at an equation from the perspective of a demo kit, and you put on one side of the equation, you could put your mind, and on the other side of the equation, you put body, then you can see that an aberration would be an imbalance between the mind and the body, correct? Everyone with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So what happens is when you solve an equation, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, for
right.
those who don't understand, please ask the questions. I have no problem. Talking about math and Dianetics is what takes me to tone 40. This is what I love to do. I don't mind answering the question. But mathematics is the same as the mind. Whatever imbalances the body will imbalance the mind, and whatever will imbalance the mind will imbalance the body, correct?
Yes, sir.
I think Sister Melanie could bear witness to this. Brother Wadu could bear witness to this. There are chemicals in the food that interact with the body that can cause an imbalance in the mind, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then there's
Yes,
an imbalance in the mind that can interrupt the balance of the neurochemicals or the hormones that could cause problems in the body, yes?
Yes, sir.
So really, when you're looking at Dianetics, you're looking at how to solve the physical problem in order to solve the mental problem, and how to solve the mental problem in order to solve the physical problem, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you can look at that as the same equation, the mind on one side and the body on the other. And when there's an imbalance in the mind, there's an imbalance in the body. That's called a psychosomatic illness, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. When you get to science or survival, he changes the language a little bit. The aberrated person becomes the interbulated thetan, correct? And he uses the term
Yes, sir.
theta. And then when you look at interbulated physical body, he called that enmeshed, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so disease is like enmeshed, an aberrated person is in theta. Okay. Same concept as Dianetics, it's just that the language kind of evolved a little bit. Okay.
Mhm.
So now who is Satan and how does he enter the equation? And how does that relate to what we're talking about? On Closing the Gap, page 320, I believe it was the minister that said this. It was either the minister or Brother Jabril, I can't remember, but I believe it was the minister. He says, so Satan, then recognizing that this is the end of his world, when the dead receive the life-giving word contained in divine revelation, Satan must enter the equation to cause the person not to think on, not to dwell on, not to conversate on the divine revelation. This is why sports is given to us 360 days. When one sports season ends, another sports season begins. Because if Satan can keep us on sport and play, then we'll never engage in conversations dealing with the higher frequencies of our thinking. We would not talk about physics and mathematics and chemistry and orbits and calculus and trigonometry and the relationship between these concepts and our Islam. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
You know, it cracks me up when people say, they have a team that won the Super Bowl. We won. If you didn't get a check in the mail, you didn't win nothing. You didn't even get a shirt. Okay, so you can't say you won if you didn't receive anything. So sports makes us, it makes us a part of something which we can't be a part of. Why do we love the devil? Because he gives us what?
Nothing.
You got all these people having parties because their team, they say we won, but what did you win?
Nothing of benefit.
Nothing of benefit. Okay. So we're at a time period where Satan has entered the equation. Have you noticed that on the cell phones, there are more free games that are being offered now? There's more things to keep us connected to our cell phone to do nothing. Not to say that games are bad, because sometimes a game is a good means of taking a break if you're doing something else. I'm an avid video game player. I'll tell you right now. As soon as this Zoom meeting gets off, we have another Zoom meeting. I'm gonna get on my Oculus and I'm gonna be shooting people for the rest of the day. But I'm taking a break from the hours that I put in studying. Okay, so some games are good to kind of let your mind take a break, but for individuals that just on their computer all day long, every day, and they're not cultivating the spirit or the mind, then there lies a problem. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then the minister says, so Satan's job is to turn the mind away from the high thing and turn it towards sex, turn it toward material acquisition, turn it toward low things. Then Satan has a chance to take the mind where he wants to take it in contravention to where God wants to take the human being. So if we're constantly in game mode, then when disappointment comes, what happens? Our tone drops, and we all know that once we get 2.0, that's when whatever engrams we have, that's when they click on, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you look at Satan enter the equation, Satan with respect to an equation can be that part of the equation that we don't understand. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
That could be the misunderstood. And the misunderstood is the ridge. And what we want to do today is we want to clear up all the misunderstandings about equations so that we can kind of remove the ridge, remove this concept of mathematics being a counter effort that just suppresses us, so that we will begin to go a little bit deeper in our study of mathematics. Okay. So the learning objectives for today, it's going to be, God willing, going to be two parts. Part one is going to involve what is the law of substitution. This is one of the most important concepts to understand, I believe, with regards to the study of the supreme wisdom and the supreme technology. It's a mathematical concept that we will use to understand different schools of spiritual thought. And once you understand this, then this concept can be used to understand not only Dianetics and our Islam, but it can be used to understand any concepts that we decide to apply our thinking to. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What is the cycle of action in the Holy Quran? We're going to cover this briefly. We've already covered this many times, but we'll cover it briefly. How can we apply these two concepts to problem number 13? We're going to look at problem number 13 as an equation. And we're going to draw some more information from problem number 13. Then we're going to look at what are the elements of a fraction. Okay. What are the elements of a fraction? And then how can fractions be used as a demo kit? The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says that there's two elements or two things to use when you study a concept. Number one, put Allah, God, at the center of what you're studying. And number two, make the concept that you're studying as if you are studying an aspect of yourself, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that is page 48 to page 51 of A Torchlight for America. And by making the subject and the self one and the same, and I can only speak on the benefit I have received from it, and that is it converts the study from short-term to long-term memory, because now you're not just studying to pass a test, you're studying to gain a deeper understanding of yourself. And studying in that way, it allows a greater retention of information. Okay. Part 2, God willing, will be next week. And we're going to deal with simplification of fractions. Okay. And then we're going to deal with the 4 operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And I think for those that have problems with fractions, the majority of the problems will come from subtraction, especially when you have find out how to subtract and learn how to carry using fractions. That's a big stumbling block that people come across. Multiplication and division, if it's taught properly, you can understand how to do that in 10 minutes. Okay. And the same addition of fraction. We can actually, or addition and subtraction, we could probably go through all 4 operations, and everyone in the room would understand how to do these 4 operations within an hour. Okay. The concepts are not difficult. It's just how they are taught. The teacher can make the concepts difficult. Go ahead, Sister Shayla.
And we're going to learn all of this next week, right?
The operations will be next week.
Okay, thank you.
Operations will be next week. This week is just kind of like laying the base. In computers, back when we used to actually have CDs that we put into the computers, you remember you had to format the CD before you can record on it?
Yeah.
Okay, formatting a CD was just preparing the CD and compartmentalizing the CD so that you could record the data on it. So we're formatting our brain this week with regards to fractions, and then we're going to record some more data on that in the brain next week. Okay, problem number 13 as an equation. After learning mathematics, which is Islam, and Islam is mathematics, it stands true. You can always prove it in no limit of time. Then you go down a little bit further and it says, now you must speak the language so you can use your mathematical theology in the proper term. Otherwise, you will not be successful unless you do speak well, for she knows all about you. Now, contained in this are 2 interesting points that we can use to kind of marry with the tech. In this, we're going to find what's called a cycle of action, which mathematically involves 3 keys: inputs, operations, and outputs. If you understand these 3 concepts, you can pretty much handle any mathematical equation that you come across. Okay. The key, the hardest part of mathematics, there's just one element in here that I'm gonna describe to us. Outside of that, understanding the equation is very, very easy. I guess it just falls back again to how the concept is being taught. So we're going to look at these terms right here: mathematics and mathematical theology. Okay. These are these two paragraphs that we have identified from problem number 13. We're going to look at these as equations, and the words in green is where we're going to input some data in order to produce an output. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Here's the elements of an equation, and it's gonna bring together what we just covered. Equations are composed of numbers, okay? And if you in problem number 13, that set of numbers represents the mathematical language, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
There are 10 numbers in the mathematical language, and that's 0 through 9.
Mm-hmm.
All of the infinite numbers that exist in the universe are composed of just those 10 numbers. Y'all with me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, when you get to the level of algebra, you're also dealing with letters. And you may ask yourself the question, oh, there's a direct message here. Okay. You may ask yourself the question, how are letters involved in mathematics? And that's when we get into algebra. And it's gonna make some sense once we get into it. Let me see here, give me 1 second, please. Okay. Got a little bit of echo going on here. All right. And then there are symbols. But understand that the symbols either represent operations to be performed, or they also represent numbers. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, sir.
So pretty much everything in mathematics, when you're dealing with letters, symbols, and numbers, the letters are going to represent pretty much other numbers. The letters will be like placeholders. The symbols are nothing more than shorthand. So instead of me saying 5 in addition to 7, instead of saying in addition to, I just put the addition sign, and that sign represents that word. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Now, we do this all the time, okay? How many of us, instead of saying all praise is due to Allah, we put APIDTA,
Yes, sir.
okay? And if we wanted to, we could probably fine tune it down to an A with an exclamation point. And those in that group would understand if I said A exclamation point, then that one letter with the exclamation point could represent all praises due to Allah, correct?
I can see the point.
Okay.
Not really, Brother Lukman. Somebody like me would be asking, what does that mean? Because that doesn't translate.
No, I'm saying, that's what I'm giving to you now. I'm saying if we understood that as a group, that's what that represented.
Yes.
If we were communicating with one another and I said A exclamation point, then you would understand because we've already given a meaning to that symbol.
Okay, gotcha.
But outside of that, we all have used probably at one time, or most of us have used APIDTA, correct?
Yes, sir.
Or we might say ASA, WS, correct? So we're using a theological algebra, I guess you could say. We're converting concepts down to letters. So we're already doing it. The law of substitution. This is a key point in our study of the text in Islam. It's also called the substitution property of equality. Okay. And I'm going to explain this in detail. And when I finish explaining this, if there's anyone that does not fully understand it, I will gladly go over it again to make sure there are no misunderstoods here. Understanding this concept will cause your brain to explode with regards to studying different concepts. So if X equals Y, and I'm going to explain this, so don't worry. If X equals Y or Y equals X, then in any equation that contains the letter Y, one can substitute in the letter X. Okay. Now here's how we're going to explain this. If I said 12 equals 8 plus X, some of us would know automatically that X equals what?
Uno.
No.
4.
X equals 4. Okay.
What
And
did you say?
the way you would solve that is subtract. Remember, whatever you do to one side, do to the other. If you subtract 8 from one side and you leave X by itself, then you have to subtract 8 from the other side, which would be 12 minus 8, correct?
Yes.
And 12 minus 8 would be what?
4.
Okay.
Cuatro.
And then what you do is you take the 4 and you plug it into where X is, and you get 12 equals 8 plus 4. You always check your math when you complete it. That's part of the cycle of action. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So in this instance, go ahead, Sister Jacqueline.
Yes, sir. I need you to repeat that whole process again, sir.
Okay, not a problem. If you take 12 equals 8 plus X, the step-by-step method of solving this, what you would do is you would subtract 8 from both sides, because the goal is you want to have the X by itself on one side of the equation. So if I subtract 8 from 8, then 8 minus 8 equals what?
0.
Okay, that's 0. So then I don't even have to write that on the other side anymore. And then if I subtract 8 on the other side, 12 minus 8 equals 4. Then the result would be 4 equals X, or X equals 4. Does that make sense? Whatever you subtract on one side, you subtract on the other. So then I'm left with X equals 4. So now if X equals 4, I take that 4, I plug it back into the original equation, and I say 8 plus 4 equals 12. And then I add 8 plus 4, and I'll get 12 equals 12. And when the numbers on one side equal the number on the other side, then you know that your answer is what?
Correct.
Your answer is correct. Does that make sense, Sister Jacqueline?
It makes sense, but the comprehension is lacking, but we can.
That's okay. No,
we can talk about that another time.
Oh, no, some of the concepts takes actually sitting down and working some equations and practicing. Right
Yes,
now,
sir.
we're just oiling the rusty locks. That's all.
Okay, yes, sir.
Oiling the rusty locks. Some of the math will just, it takes, for me to give you a whole worksheet and you work through the math, and then we would go over it, and
Yes,
then
sir.
you would look at that and you would say 4. You would do it so fast, your mind would just kick it out instantaneously.
Yes, sir.
Okay? And I know some of us in the room probably haven't done algebra in a good while. Okay, so don't be discouraged. Okay, so we know X equals 4, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, if I were to give you this equation, so Sister Jacqueline, what happens if I subtract 11 from both sides of the equation? If I say 15 minus 11, what does that give me?
4.
And if I put the 4 and I plug it into where Y is, 11 plus 4 equals what?
15.
So then you see 15 equals 15, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now, so X equals 4 and Y equals 4, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Now, what does that teach us? Okay, if I was to take the Y and plug it into the original equation where the X was and do the same thing, could I say 8 plus Y equals 12?
Yes, sir.
Could I say 11 plus X equals 15?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so outwardly, the letter X and the letter Y appear to be different, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So if you look at those two letters on a superficial level, if I say, yeah, X and Y are the same thing, someone else would say, how can they be the same thing? Those are two different letters, right?
Yes, sir.
But if we know that those two letters actually have the same value, then to say X equals Y, we would understand, because we're not dealing with the surface understanding, we're going under the surface, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you say, so the unseen is the value of the X and the Y. The X and Y is what you see, but what we can say, the quantitative value of X and Y is actually the same. Does everyone follow that concept?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sister Connie.
Okay, so does the law of substitution apply to, when Minister Farrakhan, he gave the example one time, I think he used the math, like 3 and 4 is 7, but he also said 5 and 2 is 7, and 6 and 1 is 7. Is that the same as the law of substitution?
Yes, ma'am. That's another aspect, but it's talking about the same thing.
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay. Spiritual knowledge follows the same principle. Brother Larry, Sister Denise.
Can you hear me, brother?
Yes, but I got an echo.
Okay.
Yeah, supervisor.
Do you have your other phone on, Sister Denise?
Yes, sir. I'll send it down. Okay.
Okay, now try it.
So what you're saying
I can't hear you, Sister Denise.
Okay, so what you're saying in the law of substitution, even though like Sister Ania used that everybody has a 7, regardless of the problem, the output is what counts. Am I correct?
That's a good way of looking at it. The output is still going to be the same, even though the inputs might be different.
Okay. Yes,
okay.
Sir. That's okay. Thank you.
So let's look at this real quick. If you look at Buddhism, if you look at Islam, if you look at Christianity, if you look at the Baha'i, if you look at Zoroastrianism, these are all different religious concepts with different symbols, different language, different rituals. So they all have different inputs. But when you understand the different religions and actually don't stay on the surface of the religions, but actually learn and go deeper into them, the output is really the same. The output of all these religions is showing individuals how to become one or at peace with their own mind and to become one with the God that they serve. Buddhism, Buddha taught it from one perspective. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught it from another perspective. Jesus taught it from another perspective. The Prophet Baha'u'llah, who was the founder of the Baha'i faith, taught it from a different perspective. Guru Nanak, the founder of the Sikh faith, taught it from a different perspective. But really the goal is all the same. And what is the goal? The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us that really the goal is to join our essence with the essence, correct? Y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's study guide number 2, if I'm correct,
Yes.
Building Human Potential. The minister tells us what is the goal. He says the goal is not to meet with God and sit down and say, hey God, how you doing? I've been thinking about you. The goal is for us to join our essence, our being with the being, to become one with. And when we understand and take the time to study the different religious traditions, we will understand that all the traditions really have the same destination. There's just different routes, different language, different symbolism. But what happens is, see, the symbolism is like those X and Y's. We look at all the symbolism as being different, but really, if we get past the symbolism and look at the meaning of the symbol, it's really saying the same thing. Does that make sense? So in other words, we shouldn't get caught up on the differences with religion where we can find agreement in those aspects, because really in a lot of aspects, the revealed religions are really saying the same thing. Make sense?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Sister Sultana, I did see your hand up. Did you have something?
Yes, I was thinking when you were saying that the Arabic word for that is fana. Fana is when it's total annihilation in Allah, meaning you merge with Allah.
Okay. Now spell that for me.
Fana is this F-A-N-A or F-A-N-N-A?
Okay. Okay. Praise be to Allah. Thank you. So here's some examples. Okay, remember X and Y, two different letters, but really when you get past the letters, they're saying the same thing, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, in Islam, we have what's called the purified ones, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have devil.
Yes.
So now you have devil in Shintoism. You have devil in Zoroastrianism. You have the concept of devil in what's called Taoism. Okay. You have the concept of a parable. You have the concept of parable in Buddhist thought. Okay. When you look at what's called the Nafs Amara, which is mentioned in specifically, it's mentioned in the opening letter to the self-improvement study program, and it guides us to Surah Al-Qiyamah, Surah 75 in the footnotes. Nafs Amara, it represents, the minister gives us animal, human, and divine. That Nafs Amara represents the animal level, correct?
Yes, sir.
In Islam, you have what's called the soul that's at rest.
Yes.
And you have what's called the whispering devil, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I could sit here for the next hour and go through 12 or 13 different religions and show you in each of those religions, you have the same thing. You have those that are purified. You have devil. You have parables. You have Nafs Amara. It's a different language, but it's really talking about the same thing. Okay. In Dianetics, the purified ones are called what?
Clear.
Those are called the clear. And here's the interesting thing about it. When you're in the Holy Quran and you look up the word purified ones and you clear that term in Arabic, you come to the root word khalasa, Khalasa. And the word khalasa in Arabic also means to be clear. So here we have two different words that appear to be different. But if you stay on the surface, then you think that the minister did something wrong by having us study the text, but really he gave us a tool to give us a deeper understanding of both. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Well, who is the devil in Dianetics? That's the genetic entity or the reactive mind. We're talking about the same thing.
Yes.
Okay. What is the parable? In Dianetics, that's called the demo kit. What is the Nafs Amara? When you understand the word Amara in Arabic, it means that part, that lower part of man that's constantly urging and demanding. It's the baser self of man. And Nafs, the word Nafs means mind, soul, or spirit. So in the language of Dianetics, you talk about the interbulated Thetan, correct?
Okay. Yes.
I can see that.
Same concept. Oh, soul at rest. That means when you look at, again, opening letter to the study guides, you have what's called, in the footnote for Surat al-Qiyamah, you have what's called Nafs Lawama. Now, here's the interesting thing about it. On the chart of the chart of attitudes from Dianetics, it is tone 27. In the Holy Quran, the nafs nafs mutma'inna, nafs lawama is the self-accusing spirit. The nafs mutma'inna is the soul that is at rest. On the chart of attitudes is tone 27 and above. You find it in the Holy Quran in Surah 89, ayat number 27. And in Dianetics, that's called the operating Thetan. The operating Thetan is the individual who's by definition, they rule their physical body and their physical body doesn't rule them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, O soul at rest and operating Satan. If we were to go line by line, we find a lot of similarity between these two concepts. And the whispering devil in Islam is called what in Dianetics?
The reactive mind. Circuit.
Demon circuit.
That's the demon circuit.
Yeah.
Okay, so can we see how the law of substitution works?
Yes, sir.
So if you were to go into the Holy Quran and find every verse where it talks about the whispering devil, you would get more data on the operation of the demon circuit with respect to the Holy Quran. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
because that ayat would be like an equation. If you find an equation, if you find, if you look in the Holy Quran where it talks about something dealing with sickness, you could connect that to what we would call enmist in Dianetics. Is all this lining up for everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Brother Lukman,
Yes,
can the soul at rest also be called the analytical mind?
it could be. Of course, it could be. Yes, ma'am. You know, it's interesting, and this is just a little sidebar because it just popped in my head. There is a part of the brain that's in the front called the prefrontal cortex. And no matter what you decide to do with regards to emotions, when you do the reading of, there's a document I had read about a week ago, there's an aspect of the prefrontal cortex that does a checks and balance with the emotional side, so that whenever you decide to do anything, it's done along the lines of ethics. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
They've connected the ethics of our decisions to the prefrontal cortex. And as I was reading that, I said, you know, and again, we don't know if this is true, but this is just a one way of looking at it. It's almost as if you can say the self-accusing spirit lives in the prefrontal cortex. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. And again, we can't say that the self-accusing spirit does, but when you see it, when you do the reading, you see how the different aspects of the brain connect with one another, you begin to see a map of the tech and our Islam actually working hand in hand together. So the brain becomes a demo kit, really, of the relationship between Islam and Dianetics. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Now, here's something that I was just going through. Part of it was a couple of days ago, and then part of it was actually this morning. So if you have your chart of human evaluations, the one that's from Science of Survival, if you have that handy, pull that out. I want to show you something that relates Islam to this chart of human evaluation. Everyone have, whoever has their chart handy, do you have it handy? And if you don't worry about it. Okay. When you look in Dianetics, on the chart, you have 3.5. Sister Belinda, you have yours in front of you?
Is it the one Hubbard chart of attitudes? That one?
No, the Hubbard chart of human evaluations and Dianetic processing, the one that's from Science of Survival. Chart of attitudes, I think, is Handbook for Pre-Clears or Self-Analysis.
What page that's on?
It's a chart that's actually it came with the book, and you can unfold it out, and it's about this big. I actually have mine hanging on the wall so I can always kind of look at it as I'm studying. But if you don't have it, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We'll find a way to get you that chart. Okay. But for those who have it, tone 3.5, who actually has their chart handy? Anyone?
I'm actually looking for it. It's in my book.
Okay. Brother Robin, you should have this chart memorized, correct?
Yeah, so what is it? Human evaluation?
Yes, sir. The one from Science, you know, the one that has the
yeah, I got it.
You got it? Okay. Tone 3.5 represents what on the chart?
Hold on. Pull it out.
How many attention units?
Keep it with me. Hold on. Hmm. Wait a minute.
If anyone else has it, please, just raise your hand. If not, then I'll just keep going.
70 attention units. That's what it is.
Brother, where do you find the
Right.
attention units? I have the chart.
Okay, go all the way to the left and you'll see free theta. The very first column is free theta, and that's the amount of attention units that is assigned for each tone level.
You mean human evaluation, or you talking about attitudes?
Nope, human evaluation.
I have the chart now.
Okay.
No,
If you look at tone 3.5, how many attention units are assigned to tone 3.5? Should be 70.
70.
Okay.
I don't see that.
And that's called a dianetic release, correct?
Yeah, Yes, mine sir. doesn't read that way, but okay.
Which
Yeah,
chart?
that's science of survival chart. Not
Yeah, that's the science of
self-analysis.
survival chart. Is what I'm
Got
talking
you.
about.
I got self-analysis chart. I got you. Go
Right,
ahead.
no problem. If you look at tone 3.0, that's called a very high normal, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, that's the chart, Brother Eric. Yes, sir. That's the chart right there. And he gives the value of 47 attention units on that level. As we descend, we got tone 2.5, which is boredom, and he assigns that 32 attention units. Tone 2.0 is overt hostility, and that's 22 attention units. Tone 1.5 is anger, and that's 15 attention units. And tone 1.1 is covert hostility, which is 10 attention units, correct?
Sure.
Now, how does this correspond to Islam? Some of this I was blessed to see about a week ago, and some of this I just did this morning. But when you look at 70 attention units, now if you're at 3.5, where are you mentally?
But what is attention units?
Attention units is his concept of being able to focus or to have control of your own thinking. Okay. For example, when we are in a re-stimulated, okay, when we're in an aberrated state, our attention is focused on something in the past, correct?
Correct.
So our
Yes, sir.
attention units, so what he's doing, he's using mathematics, physics, and science to explain the phenomena of the mind. So attention units, the more attention units I lose, the more aberrated I become, because my attention units are interbulated in my engramic bank. Does that make sense? So if I'm low on the tone scale, it's because my attention is focused on the past. So if I'm constantly thinking about what that Negro said to me or what you did to me and what this, that, my attention is caught in the past. So I have little access to my attention units. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Was that brother, who was that, Brother Martin? Who asked that question, or was it brother, who was that?
That was me, Brother Rashid. Yes,
Brother
that
Rashid,
makes sense.
It makes sense now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, think of it like this. If you've ever had this problem with your computer or your cell phone, have you experienced that your computer or cell phone begins to slow down and doesn't work as fast as it used to?
All the time.
Okay. Computers operate based on what's called processing speed. When you buy your computer brand new out the box, your processor works at an optimum level. Your phone operates at an optimum level. But the more you get online, the more you get on the internet, the more you use your phone, you either download apps or you can accumulate what's called malware or viruses. the malware and the viruses operate behind the scenes. You don't know they're there, but they're taking up processing speed. So all you see is your computer and your phone is slowing down, but you don't know why, correct?
Yes, sir.
The same thing happens with the mind. Our mind slows down because we have other stuff operating behind the scene in what's called the engram, but we don't know that it's there, but we just know our thinking has slowed down. Does that make sense?
Go ahead.
Okay, so our ability, so look at attention units as connected to the average person's the average speed of thought is 24 billion miles per second. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if that's so look at that as processing speed. That's the average, but that means some of us think slower than 24 billion miles per second, and some of us would be able to think faster than 24 billion miles per second, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay,
So,
so then the question is asked in our problem book, you know, if the average speed of thought is 24 billion miles per second, how many round trips can you make to the far planet Pluto in 10 seconds? The first question he asks is, why would he even ask that question to travel to Pluto at 24 billion miles per second? But then the question is, if you could think more, if you can think more quickly than 24 billion miles per second, that means what? You can make more round trips to Pluto in less time, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you look at self-analysis in the opening of the book, there's two things that he mentions that will increase when you start self-analysis. He says your ability to think, right? He mentions your reaction time, right?
Right.
He says, have a friend hold a dollar bill and you hold your fingers underneath. Let your friend release the dollar bill and see where you catch the dollar bill. And based on where you catch that dollar bill determines your reaction time, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so self-analysis, based on what L. Ron Hubbard has stated, is designed to increase your processing speed. So when we're going through all those lists, what are we doing? We're removing malware that's slowing down the processor. All the things in those lists represent places in our time track where our attention units are stuck at various locations. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you want a real good demo kit, go to YouTube, pull up a video that deals with defragmentation of a computer. And really self-analysis is you're defragging your mind. You're removing all the gaps in your thinking. You're compressing the information, which allows your brain to be able to extract data at a quicker rate. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sister
Brother
Ann,
Lukman, can I ask a question?
go ahead, Sister Zakia.
Say for an example, you on 3.5 and someone come at you on a 1.1 and then you visit that 1.1, how do you bring that initial person back? And Brother Robin, I had asked that question. Look at your direct text if you could. But how do you then bring that person back up to a 3.5?
That is a very good question. If you actually have access to that chart tells you exactly which type of processing to use on specific tone levels. If I'm not mistaken, I don't have the chart right in front of me. At 1.1, I believe it has to deal with present time or has to deal with straight wire, but I'm going off the top of my head because I don't have the chart in front of me. But someone who has the chart, can you look at 1.1 and go to the area that deals with the type of processing that's necessary?
Is that the self-analysis chart or a different chart?
No, that's science of survival chart.
Okay, okay, I don't have it.
And let me just give an example. I remember like, this actually just recently happened to me, but I'm gonna talk about a situation that I did. One day I was getting audited and I discovered some data. And so I took it to my mother and I learned that I I wasn't supposed to do that. I was new, with the technology. So I didn't know to not bring that up to her, because that actually ruffled some feathers. And then being as though she wasn't in a process of being audited or getting audited, it disturbed her. And I don't even know how long that was or how it impeded her growth and development. But being as though I was in the process and studying, I was helped, but not her.
Yes.
And so just for future references, for those of us that is in the process and we don't know, we can damage someone, so that was a question that I had kind of like asked Brother Robin, if he can kind of clarify that. But I think a lot that I'm kind of on it, and I know how to kind of like dodge certain things at this point, because I study self and I study what it would tick me off, and and before I will explode, I know how to just like shut it. I just monitor myself, I think.
No, that's a perfect point. And I'll use myself as an example. And if Brother Robin would like to add some data, that's fine too. I did the same thing one time. And I know for a fact, because I actually have a memory. I have a memory. And it's not from a dream, but I have a memory. And I'll tell you how far back this memory goes. For those that remember when the TV actually went off at 12 o'clock. Yep. Okay. I have a memory of waking up on the couch. Now, this is prior to 1975. So we're talking about 1973, 1974, 1975, somewhere around there. And I have a clear, distinct memory waking up on the couch. And as I'm sharing this with you, I can still see the room. I know the color of the couch. It was a gray couch. I can still see the TV was black and white. I still remember remember the national anthem used to play on the TV at 12 o'clock? And there was, you have the national anthem. This concludes our broadcasting. Please come again to, boom, and then you get that sound and you get those different colors across the screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I remember jumping off the couch. I can still remember looking at my little chubby little legs, jump off the couch, turn the TV off, and I go into my bedroom. And what had haunted me my whole life was, if someone was home with me, I would have not been asleep on the couch. They would have put me to bed in my crib. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And so that's prior to 1975. But before my father passed away, one day I asked him, I said, Dad, I have a strange question to ask you. And I need to know this, because it was really something that had bothered me my whole entire life. I didn't like being alone. Being alone was real stimulative to me. And I said, Dad, was there ever a time that I was left alone at home? And he didn't want to answer the question, because even though my parents were no longer together, he did not want me to look ill upon my mom. He said there was times when he would, because he had to work the third, what they call third shift at General Electric, and that my mother would go out and she would leave me home by myself, even as an infant. And my godmother would bump into my mother while she was out and say, and my birth name is Anthony. She'd say, where's Tony at? He's back at the house. She would come back to the house, find me in my crib by myself, crying, because I was home alone. My godmother confirmed it. My father confirmed it. Now, I never have any judgment towards my mom, because I understand my mother went through what she went through in her childhood. But when you go through your processing and you find out your truth, that's your truth. The mistake we make is, and I did the same thing, I had mentioned it to my mom, but automatically that individual is going to do what? They're going to invalidate your data. So now you have a truth that you believe is true. Now it's been invalidated. Do you believe your parent, or do you believe what you found out to be your truth? So you don't want to share it. You don't want to go and try to talk to the parents, because remember, if they did what they did, that was a manifestation of their reactive mind, because I found out later that my mother had went through what she went through in her childhood, and that was probably the reason why she was the way she was. My mother and I had a very great relationship on it up until the time that she passed last year. But that was something I carried around my entire life. I didn't like being alone. But once I was able to deal with that, that no longer has the same effect on me. So I made a long response to answer the question that whatever truth you find, that is your truth. And don't try to have someone else validate your truth, because they'll invalidate it and it gets you'll become more aberrated. Does that make sense, Sister Zakia?
Yes, sir. You on point with it, and it, yep, you good. Thank you.
Okay.
And Brother Luke,
I got Sister Ania first, and then I got Sister Belinda, and then we'll go ahead, Sister Ania. I'm sorry, we've been waiting patiently.
Well, two things. I'll go with the second one first. When you was talking about the speed of thought and the average speed of thought, it made me think of, we may be a little slower in thinking than other people, but also our speed of thought could change depending on what it is we're thinking about. If it's something that intrigues us and we're very interested in, or have an affinity with, our speed of thinking may be much faster. So let's just say if I'm somebody like Brother Wadud and I'm in the medical field, anything medical related, my speed of thought may speed up and become more than average. But if it's, let's say if it's related to botany and I'm not interested in botany and I'm not interested in gardening and things of that nature, then it may slow down. So that was just a secondary thought there. But initially I raised my hand because when earlier on you mentioned interbulated, and I'm not at home, wasn't able to look it up. I had to make a quick run down the street. And so everything you said after that just was a blur because I got stuck on the word interbulated. So could you just give that definition again and the reason when you had used that word?
Okay, interbulated theta, if you look at the word turbulence, okay, turbulence, and I'll use what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad has stated. Remember, we were taught that if you take water and you whip it in a circle, you take whatever's underneath and bring it to the surface. Sister Ania?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what you're doing to the water is you're causing turbulence in that water.
Okay, all right.
You're stirring something up. I can't think of the exact definition off the top of my head, but to interbulate means to cause turbulence, to disrupt. When a plane is in the air and it hits pockets, it's hitting what? It's hitting turbulence, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what turbulence does with respect to Dianetics, do you remember probably about a year ago, we dealt with the spider web as a demo kit?
No, I don't remember it offhand, but when you said that about the water, turbulence in the water, it made me think of, and tell me if I'm correct in this, but it made me think of Leviathan, bringing, when you stir up water, all the sediment that's at the bottom comes up, and so it gets mixed in with the water. So it made me think about that Leviathan, and when Minister Farrakhan talked about the monsters of the subconscious mind, bringing up things from the deep. So I get it.
That's exactly what it is. And when you look at that in science of survival, you have what's called N theta, which is just an abbreviation of interbulated theta. And then you have what's called interbulated mest, what he calls N-mest. So there's a relationship between N theta and N-mest, which would be similar to, in Dianetics, it would be aberration and psychosomatic illness. In our language, it could be when there's an imbalance in the mind, it causes an imbalance in the body. So there's a disease that's connected to the emotion. Does that all make sense, Sister Ania?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the question. Go ahead, Sister Belinda.
I was just answering the question on the processing and it's lock scanning.
Okay.
If you're at 1.1.
Okay. So the beauty of the chart is once you can locate someone, then if you use this chart, you know exactly which technique to use at which level. Okay. Brother Timothy.
Oh, yes, sir. Sister Belinda actually answered. I had the chart in front of me. I was going to read that, but she already answered it.
Okay. And I think the original question was Sister Zakia had asked the original question of 1.1. Was that you, Sister Zakia?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
And on the 1.5, I'm sorry. On the
go ahead.
1.5, I guess it's saying the same thing. It says establish ARC with mimicry, if necessary. Use straight memory on locks, scan locks, touch no engrams.
Yes. Yes. You don't want to touch any engrams because the person is already low and the engram is going to bring them a little bit lower. And it's almost like if you bring them too low, you might cause some other problems. You might actually activate something that you don't want. So you got to first gain them attention units and get them to a certain level, and then you can apply other techniques. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Go ahead, Brother Rashid.
Something like that. So the attitude units. So is that to say, like, the more you are in present time, the more units you're using?
That's a good way of looking at it. The more you're in present time, the more you have access to attention units.
And it's like to put some math to it, it's like a car. If you have a car and then you have a car that has a trailer on the back of it. If you're driving the car at a max speed, it's like you being able to use thought to the highest degree, above the average speed. But if you're driving a car that has a pitch to it, then you're not going to be able to have that much speed because you're carrying some past with you as you are in the present.
That's perfect, brother. And what effect does that have on the engine?
Oh, it's drawing it down. Yeah, it slows it up and makes it work harder.
So now connect that to the effect that the past has on us mentally and physically. What effect does our past have on us physically? It's going to cause our body to work harder, which is why the uncle and the wife of the wife of the uncle of W.D. Farad, they have all these medical problems, correct?
Yes.
They live in the wilderness of North America and they live other than their own self. So they have baggage that's connected to their vehicle, their mental vehicle, and it's slowing them down and causing them problems, correct?
Right.
Brother Rashid?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
That's a perfect demo kit right there. That's perfect. Go ahead, Sister Shayla.
The sister asked the question, how would she know when she moves someone from a 1.1 to a 3? No auditor is going to do that. Move someone on that level of the tone scale. As long as the indicators are good and he or she has come up, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
There's no jump where an auditor,
no.
where I just want her to understand that there's no way she can be the best auditor in the world. That's not going to happen. That person is not going to move to a 3.0.
No, it's gradient. It's a gradient scale. Thank you, Sister Shayla. That's actually a good point. In order to get up to 3.5, you have to first get from 1.1 to 1.5. It's a gradient, tedious process, but there's no jump like that. But thank you, Sister Shayla.
One more thing
Brother,
about that.
oh.
One more thing about that. I just
Mhm.
want everybody to be very clear that this, to stay at this level on the tone scale, is not our auditing. It's something that the pre-clear has to do about their ethics.
Mhm.
And that's a discussion for another time, that only audit will not get, of course, the more you audit, the more case gain you gain and the more knowledge you acquire. And so you
Mhm.
keep applying the process, but the pre-clear has to do some stuff on their own
Mhm.
that the auditor can do for them.
Mhm. Yes, ma'am. Will they say before the processing or the auditing can go in, the ethics has to be there?
Absolutely.
Okay. Brother Rashid, you have something else?
Yes, sir. So when the messenger told the minister that if you're speaking with somebody in, what is it, 8 minutes, 20 seconds,
I was just
if you
thinking
can,
that. Go ahead, brother.
and when you're at a higher scale and someone's at a lower scale, and their conversation shows just how much they're carrying. You know, they might be complaining about a situation that just occurred or previously occurred, and if you can get them to communicate more in the present time, then that's gonna raise their level by just communication. So when the message said that 8 minutes, 20 seconds, when you're talking to somebody and you're bringing them up, you're bringing them into the present state of mind, present time period, which will increase that. Would that be said correctly?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because if you're applying light, life, and power, 8 minutes and 20 seconds, you are basically, if you translate that to the tech, you're gaining attention units. And if you had the chart on column A, B, it says present time, and when you get like 1.1 to I think it's 1.1, it talks about, or 1.5 says the PC's out of present time. Sometimes you just got to run pleasure moments to get them to a certain level. And as you're doing this, you're bringing them back into present time. And then from there, you're processing. But I would say that that's the same thing as was given to us in Closing the Gap, where it talks about when your word has light, life, and power, you can speak to someone and in 8 minutes, 20 seconds, you can bring them up. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But now going back to what Sister Shayla said, once the person comes up to a certain level, then there's certain responsibilities that individual has to do to stay at that level. Okay. So we can have all the Zoom meetings that we want and all the processing we want, but if we go back and do certain things, then we're going to go right back down that tone scale. The Bible says it like this: a dog returning to its vomit. Does that make sense?
Right.
Okay, so the dog returning to its vomit and a 3.0 returning to 1.1 or 1.5, if that's based on our own behavior. But then again, I also, now if anyone has data on this, please correct me. I believe he said you can be at a certain tone level for a certain amount of time and you can fall back because there's some underlying issues there. Does anyone have any data on that?
That's like
I'm sorry.
Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
sister. Go ahead.
I don't have data on that, but in reference to you can go back, this is why, for an example, myself, I stay in the minister always says, accept your own and be yourself, and learn how to create my own environment. Learned how to, I admire jazz and aromatherapies and scented candles. I have to already literally be in a calming environment because anybody can come and tee you off any given moment.
Yes, ma'am.
And will disrupt your peace. And so by studying myself, I learned that just by watching. And so you can go back, and I know that. But those are some of the little things I do to stay afloat. And I think a lot for my mind, because a lot of us is losing it, that. And so had I not been conscious about myself, I would fall victim to, you know, what's out here and everything. And you know, what they say about that crab in the barrel, you know, and you know, hurt people.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
we just gotta stay, you know, stay afloat. And I just make sure I just stay afloat, and I like to actually master trying to stay afloat. You know, I'd be like, yo, let me see if they're gonna try to get me today. You know, I focus on that more so than anything. But Brother Robin, you there? You got my text, the message?
I got it. I did get it.
Yeah, we pretty much answered it now though. But all right, thank you. That's all. Come later.
Hey, so,
Yeah,
so just as we could change our level in 8 seconds, you speak about it, you raise them, you leave their presence in 8 minutes and 20 seconds, they can dump right back down. It's like the other side of the equation. Equals the same.
It's a possibility, but and that's depending on, you know, what's the environment. Are there any re-stimulators? There could be other elements that can cause that. You know, when you look at the minister says what? He brings his own atmosphere with him, correct?
Yeah.
And we have to be able to do the same.
That's like being, it's like you speak with someone who's in the hospital, and you raise them up in that 8 minutes and 20-second time period where they're feeling better about themselves. Then you leave the room, and then the nurse comes in and they do some more shocking news about.
You're fading in and out, brother.
Okay.
Yeah, but that nurse has stuck a needle in the brain.
Right.
Yes, sir. Is that it, Brother Rashid?
All right. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Brother Rashid. Go ahead, Brother Robin.
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Walaikum salam.
Pardon my absence. I was at a doctor's appointment, and that's why my sister, I couldn't answer anything because I was getting blood work and other stuff happening. But thank Allah, I'm all right. It's just a checkup. Praise be to Allah. But I will say this about progressing and regressing as it relates to the tone scale. I notice if you're not growing, there is no stable places. There is no stable place. Like I'm here, you know, and I don't move, and I'm just right here, as I understand it. I spoke to Sister Naira. I spoke to Brother Alexander. I spoke to, I believe, Brother Abdul Malik in the past. I spoke to a bunch of clears at in the various orgs, and they said it's very dangerous to just be. You can't just stay clear. Like when you become clear, you can't just say I'm clear. That's it. Because at a certain point, if you don't advance, you'll begin to get sick and become affected. So I would definitely say, just from my observation and from what I've heard and spoken to people at that point, that I'm sure there is no like stable place. I remember the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan saying, as it relates to knowledge, once you get to a place where you say, I know, I know. He said that's where you plateau and you start declining. Once you get to that point. So it's a constant. You know what I'm saying? What is the fruit? Fruit is the best. They're constantly training and conditioning themselves to meet and overcome all obstacles in our path. So I think, you're gonna always have those challenges, but it's like lifting weights. You may be on 100 pounds this year, but next year you may be on 500 pounds. And then next year you're on 700 pounds. It's always gonna be those up and down challenges, you know, but you know, as long as you keep progressing and keep your eyes on the future and keep creating, I think that's how you stay in a growth pattern, by not being necessarily in present time, but being in a future time and constantly creating. Because creation happens in the future, you know. So I just thought I shared that. I pray that makes sense. And thank you for letting me share that. I salute.
Thanks a lot, sir. And if you work out and get from 100 to 200, and then you stop working out, you'll notice you're going to fall back from 200 back down to 100. So the same
That's
concept,
right.
working out to gain muscle is the same thing that happens if you don't work out. You go back to that flabbiness that you had before you got the muscle. You got to start the process all over again. Sister Shayla.
I just want, for those that are considered as their self new, it's very important that you learn the auditor's code, that you buy it, and that you duplicate the same process, because you won't go wrong. You won't mess anyone up. You won't violate any rule if you know the code, your auditor's code. It's very, very important not to skip a step. Like, but to understand, we've been falling for 460 years, and we have taken on something that we don't think we understand. But if you make a bean pie and you use the same ingredient, don't be like me, don't bake like me. I make my own thing. I put whatever I want to put in mine, but that's not the original bean pie. So if we stick to the recipe, we will be okay. Nothing to reminisce over. When you are in an environment that is very low and you are generating the environment, it's very important that you go and regenerate yourself, because they will raise you will raise their tone, but you will lose some steam, for a better word. So just know, the sister says she knows herself and she knows to create. That's very good, sister, that you don't stay in environments that are degrading to your growth, or that you love people, but some people you have to leave alone. Even though we love them, we have to get away from them. It's very important for your development. It's key. It's part of your life. So just be mindful of who you are and what you're trying to do. It doesn't mean you love them less. It's just like, not right now.
It just means you love yourself more.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Shayla. Wow. And Sister Belinda, thank you for emotional curve. That's what I was trying to remember, but I couldn't remember the name of it. It's the emotional curve.
Yes.
The definition that you put in there. That's what it was. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you
welcome.
very much for that.
Okay. Now, can you see my screen? Are we back to the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now what I want to show is, how do these tone levels, the attention units, actually line up with Islam or the Holy Quran? So at 3.5, what would be your mindset at 3.5? How do you feel at 3.5? Anyone? A Dianetic release is like having that aha moment, right? Y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's Surah 70? That's the ways of ascent, right?
Elevated place.
Is that the ways of ascent?
Oh, 70.
You said 7.
You said 7. So we
No,
said
70.
elevated.
But 7 is elevated places.
Yes.
Okay. It's the elevated places. I got my titles mixed up, but it's the elevated places. What is that? Did I put that up in Arabic? Let me see if I put that up in Arabic. Let's see. No, Surah 70, the ways of ascent. El Mirage. Y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I was looking at that 70 attention units and a Dianetic release and high in the tone scale being at part of the ways of ascent. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. When I look at it, you're a very high normal, 47 attention units. What surah is 47?
Muhammad.
47, like Muhammad.
It's Muhammad.
Mhm.
Now, boredom. Boredom is actually pretty interesting because boredom, if you look at number 32, there's two directions you can go at 32 because 32 is what with regards to water?
Freezing.
That's freezing, right?
Yes.
But 32 is also which surah?
Adoration. Adoration.
The adoration, or in Arabic, it's called al-sajda.
Yes.
So when you're bored, that's the time where you got to pray to get back up the tone scale, right?
Yes.
Because if we're bored and we don't pray, that's when we get frozen, correct?
That's right.
That's true.
Right? So now at 2.0, you have what's called overt hostility, correct? And that's Surah 22, which is titled El Hajj. And one of the definitions for Hajj is Hajjah, which means to argue. So 2.0 over hostility, 22 attention units can connect to Surah 22 because when you're over hostile, that's when we begin to argue, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Now look at anger. How many, not only is it 1.5, but it's also 15 attention units. And the word for anger is el-hijr. And the word hijr also means suppression.
Excellent.
And now at covert hostility, you have Jonah. And what did he do? He went away in wrath, right? So he was hostile, but he left.
Yes.
So I thought it was interesting that the numbers on the scale actually corresponded to surahs in the Holy Quran.
Huh. I never thought of that.
I didn't either, sister. Allah teaches man by the pen what man knew not. So now if we can remember the tone scale, so I automatically know now tone 2.5, that's 32 attention units. So I know when I get bored, if I don't pray, I'm going to be hitting the ice cream. I already know it. It's either prayer or a bag of Doritos or Fritos. Y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But now it's like, okay, connecting things with, so when we meet someone who is at 2.0, we know they're overtly hostile. We might be able to go in Surah 22 and find some processing. Who knows? It's a possibility, correct?
That's right.
Okay. And if I can get myself to a Dianetic release, if I can get myself to tone, when I'm studying is when I'm at my highest tone level. When I'm amongst the believers is when I'm at my highest tone level. And so what would this conversation be called? This is our way of ascent, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Because as we converse, what's happening? We're getting case gains. We're getting attention units back, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so now let's begin to land this plane a little bit. So we're taking problem number 13, and we're just going to look at it from the perspective of fractions, because fractions is an aspect of mathematics, correct?
It is. It is.
So then it would stand true that after learning fractions, which is Islam, and Islam is fraction, it stands true, and you can always prove it in a little bit of time. Now you must speak the language so you can use your fractional theology. Can we make that connection? So now fractions, we're going to look at as a demo kit to understand Allah, self, and the Dianetic text in a mathematical way. Okay. Cycle of action. This is a key point right here with mathematics. Cycle of action. An equation is composed of elements. If you don't get any other concept down pat, get this one down, because you can use this with anything that you study. Mathematics, physics, chemistry, fractions, whole number, whatever. This concept you can use to study anything that you put your mind to. Everything that you study as a concept is composed of elements, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we have numbers, we have letters, and we have symbols, and we've already explained what those are. And this is what equations are made up of. Start. You have what's called the operations, which is your flow, and then you have an output, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All equations are the same. They have like the same structure. You have either numbers, letters, or symbols, and then you have operations between the two. So if I have two symbols next to each other, there's an operation between those two elements, correct?
Right. Correct.
And the operations from arithmetic up to calculus, there's only 4 operations. Add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So if you understand the operation, then you understand the flow between the elements, correct?
Yes.
If you don't understand the symbol, if you don't understand the letter, and if you don't understand the operation, that's where the ridge is, correct?
Correct.
And the only thing a ridge is, it's a misunderstanding of something or a lack of understanding of something. So here's an example. Here's an equation. C equals 2 pi r. Now, if you know the answers to the question, don't answer. I just want individuals that don't understand. What does anyone, well, no, I can't say that. Whoever wants to contribute. Is there anyone that does not know what C represents in this equation? Anyone that does not know?
I don't know it.
Okay.
Brother
Okay.
Salam.
So this will call equation processing. Okay, and we're going to hit this equation on a gradient scale, and by the time we finish, you'll know exactly what it is. The C represents circumference. We're taking the word circumference and we're representing it by just one letter. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Circumference means circumferere. Circumferere means to measure or by going around something. Now on the other side, you have 2 pi and you have r, correct? Right. Okay. R is just a letter that represents the word radius. That's where your input is. You have to plug a number there. So now we take circumference and you break it down to its elements. You have a C, you have an equal sign, you have the number 2, you have a little symbol called pi, and then you have the symbol R. Okay, those are the elements. If I have the equal sign, that's telling me the flow from one side to the other, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, if I have the 2, the pi, and the R, I have 3 elements there, correct? Yes. What relationship or what operation is taking place in between these 3 elements? Multiplication. Multiplication. So we have the elements and we know what type of flow we have in between. So so now here's a question. What is the radius of the Earth?
Man,
The radius is 1/2 of the diameter.
7,900.
7,926.
Okay, so that's the diameter. So the radius would be what?
I wish I didn't.
And the easy way to remember this, if you're on your calculator,
Divided by 2. Take
start
half of
with
that.
the 3, go up to the 9, come down to the 6, and go to the 3 again. 3,963. Y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
3,963. That's 1/2 of the diameter. Go ahead, Sister Ania. You're on mute. There you go.
Right, I was trying to get off mute. Okay, I didn't understand the phrase you used about the equal signs when you said it represents the flow from one side to the other. So that confused me. I didn't understand that.
Okay, so if you look at the 2, the pi, and the r, those are your elements. The flow between those 3 parts is governed by multiplication, correct? Sister Ania?
Well, it's the language is what's confusing.
Okay, the flow simply means understanding the concept as you go from the first part through to the end. So the equal side is just saying that this side on the right is equal to this side on the left, and that is the flow. That's connecting both sides together. So when you think of the word flow, think of like a current, like you're understanding having a starting point and an end point. So circumference is the same as 2 times pi times r. That equal sign is just a connector showing that this is equal to that. And that's just the flow of the thought process, the flow of the thinking. Remember, there's flow, there's ridges and dispersals.
Okay, well, what it is it's just you introduce new language and it causes a ridge.
Well, flow is a language in Dianetics that we use.
Right. I just understand it in the way you used it to the equal.
Okay.
It's just.
So if I give you 2 times pi times r, you understand how those 3 things are connected together?
Yeah, right.
Okay, that would be multiplication, correct?
Right.
Okay. I think by the time we get to the bottom, it'll click for you. So we'll finish it, and then if it doesn't click after that, then we'll work on a little bit more. But I think you'll get it. The radius of the Earth is our input. So we go 3,963. But now once I take that equation and I input the numbers, okay, you see where I inputted the R for 3,963? Everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then pi is what? That's 3.141, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now once I input all the numbers, it's no longer algebra. It's arithmetic now, right?
Right. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So now that I've input the numbers, it's no longer algebra. And then when you multiply those 3 numbers together, what do you get?
The circumference, that's what we're looking for.
You'll get the circumference, and the number you get is 24,895.566, which rounds up to 24,896 miles, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that equal sign is just saying that the information on one side is going to flow to produce the solution on the other side. If I gave you this number, if I said 24,896 miles equals 2 pi r, if you understand the rules, you could figure out what r is. If we started on the other side of the equation and work in the opposite direction, you would understand the flow in that direction. Okay. So when I'm saying the word flow, I'm just saying that what is true on one side is flowing to become a truth on the other side. Does that clear it up a little bit, Sister Ania?
Yeah, I guess it's just, you know, with L. Ron Hubbard, when sometimes his use of the language, it just takes some processing.
Yeah, I understand.
And this is just one of those. It's like, why use the word flow there? To me, just at this point, it doesn't really make sense to use that particular word. I guess I need another word to see, well, I guess to help me understand why he would use the word flow there.
From what I have learned, the concept of flow with regards to thought could be synonymous with understanding. If you have understanding of a concept, that means you have flow. And I think, Sister Belinda, if you have not already done so, could you put the word the word flow up
Yes,
in
sir.
the chat, just so we can have some data on that?
You want it from the tech or
Oh yeah, from the tech dictionary, yes.
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay, and then we'll come back to that, and then see if we can connect some dots on that. Quick summary. Can we agree that our lessons can be used as formula?
Yeah.
Okay. The law of substitution can be used with respect to different spiritual beliefs. I think we have a better understanding of law of substitution. Cycles of action can be used to understand any and all concepts. Everything that I study now, I look for, how is this a cycle of action? And just for me, it helps me understand things much easier. Okay. For flow.
And the F got left off, but
Yeah, I see that. I see it. An impulse or direction of energy particles or thought or masses between terminals. So the terminals, we could say, are the two sides of the equation. Okay, and the flow is the thought traveling between the two. The progress of particles or impulses or waves from point A to point B. Flow has the connotation of being somewhat directional. Okay, a progress of energy between 2 points. The points may have masses, the points are fixed, and the fixedness of the points and their opposition produces the phenomena of flows. Any line of flow, whether contracting or lengthening, is called a flow. A common manifestation is seen in an electric light wire. So electric wires, when you got the electricity, it's flowing between 2 points. The same concept can be applied to thinking and to thought. Let's see here. Okay. How can we use these principles with respect to the study of fractions? If we could, I will cover this very quickly, and then we'll save the rest for next week. Okay, elements of fractions.
Brother Lukeman.
Yes, ma'am.
Just before you go on, when you was reading the definition of flow, my signal went out, so I missed part of it. But as you was explaining that,
I was thinking about a circuit and like an electrical circuit, and how or I guess like an electrical circuit and a magnet, how everything when you turn it on, all of the particles line up in
Yes.
series and like in an array,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have flow. So
Yeah.
that's what I thought of. So I don't know if that has any relation to the equation where if using the word flow then. I'm sorry, but I just got stuck on that, and it just sometimes like stuck on a thing. I'm just stuck until I get done stuck.
Okay. So when you look at a magnet, what makes a magnet is that all of the electrons or the particle are aligned in the same direction. Now, the way you can translate that into the study of math or science is if you take an equation, for example, and if you understand how each item is aligned with one another, then in the alignment of those elements, that is like a mental representation of flow. And I just think if you clear the word using the tech dictionary and then clear it using a regular dictionary.
It's in the chat.
Yes, I've seen it in the chat, but also using a regular dictionary. And again, it's the use of the concepts, because L. Ron Hubbard provided the concepts, but now we're taking that as a tool to understand other concepts. Does that kind of make sense? Because he taught it from one perspective.
Okay.
But we're looking to take the same tech, but now take it to another level. We want to understand from the perspective of what the Most High Elijah Muhammad says in Closing the Gap. The quote is, when you understand the physical, when you understand the principles behind the universe, you know, when you understand the natural laws behind the universe, then that's the language of a scientist. We're taking the tools of Dianetics, but we're using them to look at the universe from a different perspective so we can begin to learn the language of scientists. Does that make sense? So now we just have to take our, as the minister says, we have to expand the diameter of our thinking to increase the circumference of our activity. And using these tools and applying them to different aspects of mathematics, science, and physics, we will begin the process of understanding these might be complex concepts, but they're not complex. It's just that our educational system was impotent. The educational system we all came up under was not designed to make us into God, basically.
Go ahead.
So it was designed to keep us limited in our thinking. Now we're taking the tool and using it to think outside the normal realms of where we normally thought. And some of this is going to be some ridges. That's normal. Because family, how many of us have thought about these aspects, and how many of us have thought about this in the past? These are new thoughts.
Okay, you're very well.
Huh?
Very well. I say very well said. Because in our lessons and in scriptures, Allah say He will make all things new.
Exactly.
And L. Ron Hubbard, when he came with his teaching, he used something called a new nomenclature. That means words that are very familiar in the regular language has a different meaning in Scientology or Dianetics. So now that's what makes it difficult sometimes for us to accept what the minister gave us. Because the nomenclature, it makes a word different, and now we become confused. And whenever there is confusion, it means that you have misunderstood the word.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at L. Ron Hubbard, this is a man, he's a scientist, he's a physicist, And also he said that he studied many religions for years. So that means whatever he come with, and you can see from the language that you are using, you can see religion coming in and out of it. And at the same time, you see science coming out of it. So now, since everything is made new, it's for us now to learn the new language, the same way those before us did. And most likely we will get access to the knowledge, because mostly when you go to that chat that you are going through, it says a lot, but it has to be studied and understood. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Brother Eric. And as you're talking, here's the idea that comes to mind. What I'm going to do as my assignment is to get more in-depth data on flow with respect to the Holy Quran, so we can kind of connect the dots from both sides and look at flow from the perspective of Islam, our supreme wisdom, and our teachings, and how it relates to flow from the perspective of the text. Does that make sense?
Yes. Also in the word flow, you got inflow and outflow.
Inflow and outflow, definitely. Okay. Okay, let me touch on one aspect and we will wrap it up for you.
Brother Lukman,
Yes.
I remember Brother Nori talked about that centrifugal and that centrifugal, am I saying it right? And how we draw things to us or extract it away from us. So all of this kind of, to me, is playing, its position in that area.
Centrifugal and what's called centripetal.
Yes.
Okay.
It's that's when you get into study what's called angular velocity. Like, for example, and I'll just touch on this for a quick second. When you look at the Earth as it travels around the sun, okay, what is the velocity that the Earth is traveling on its way around the sun?
1,037 I've heard.
No, sir. That's what everyone says.
What is it?
That's it. That's its axial velocity. That's the velocity it travels on its axis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But if you were to calculate how fast it's traveling based on its linear velocity,
okay,
around the sun, the Earth actually has two velocities it's travel. Really, it's really three, because remember the sun is also traveling around a central point, correct?
That's right.
Okay, and there was an article that Mother Tanet Muhammad gave years ago. She named the star system that our sun, if I'm not mistaken, circulates around that star system. And I believe she said it's 440 light years away, because I remember 440. But when you look at the Earth has its axial velocity. The velocity it travels on its axis is 1,037 1/3 miles per hour. Now, if you look at question number 16 of the problem book, if you calculate the path that it travels on its orbit around the sun, that would be similar to the circumference of a circle, correct? Yes?
No.
Okay, an orbit is just an orbital circuit, is like a circle around a central point. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did I lose anyone yet?
I'm looking.
Nah, you there, you good.
Okay, the Earth is traveling around the sun. It has an orbit. So now if you know velocity equals distance over time, okay? If I know that the Earth, I can calculate the distance it's traveling. And if I know it travels that circuit in 365 1/4 days, then I should be able to calculate the velocity at which the Earth is traveling.
You're right.
And if you do all the math, the Earth is actually traveling 19 miles per second. In its orbit around the sun, it's traveling 1,037 1/3 miles per hour on its axis, because you have what? You have axial rotation and you have what's called axial velocity, and you have what's called linear velocity. Does that make sense?
Okay, got it.
Sir.
So what we're doing now is we're taking the tech and we're expanding the diameter of our thinking. And as soon as you expand the diameter of your thinking, what happens to the circumference of our activity? Doesn't that increase in size?
Mm-hmm.
How many of us have increased the types of things we have studied over the course of the past, say, 3 to 6 months? How many of us have increased our study in different fields that we never thought about before?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it has nothing to do with Brother Lukman. It just has something to do with what the minister says. If you expand the diameter of our thinking, you increase the circumference of your activity. You have no choice. Once you get your mind in the teachings and then you apply the tech, you can't contain the mind in the small box that I was in before, because now your mind is like, I got to get new stuff. It's like your mind is on fire and you need to consume more data. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can't remain the same when you can. So when we're told that the lessons will make you God, but the tech will make you God quicker,
Yes.
you can't help but have a thirst and a desire for more levels of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding now. Why? Because the mind has become invigorated.
That's why knowledge is infinite.
That's why our attention units, we don't, at the top of the scale, he puts 1,000, but that's just an arbitrary thing. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us that the mind of the original man is infinite. We don't have a limit on our attention units.
Right.
We can have 1,000,000 attention units if we desire to have that. Okay. Well, family, it is 12:22. I don't want to try your patience. I can save the rest of this and we can pick it up. We can pick the rest. We can get back into fractions on next Wednesday, God willing. Before we close, flow is one. Does anyone have any concepts that they would like to see covered in the future? Any concepts about math, science, physics, chemistry, doesn't matter. Anything?
Yes, sir. Axioms.
Axioms. Ooh, that's a good one. Axioms are a good one. And Sister Tina, I will tell you why real quick. When you look at advanced procedures and axioms, there are some of those axioms that actually line up with concepts found in the Holy Quran. And I'll leave it on that note. So axioms is another assignment that I will take on, and flow is a concept or assignment I will take on. Anything else anyone has before we close? Are you ready to close it out? Any last minute? Oh, go ahead.
What about see or vision? Because you know the eyes is the only thing that that's connected to the brain that you can see out. So I always wanted to kind of get into how the mind is literally working by what we physically see. So I don't know how you can enable that one, but that's just a thought.
Like vision or sight as a demo kit?
Yes.
Okay.
Because eyes is connected to the brain.
Okay.
Can you also include dealing with the pineal gland?
I will do my best. The pineal gland as a demo kit?
Yes, dealing with vision, what insight she's talking about.
Okay.
That's the word. There you go. What picture is that behind you, beloved? That's an interesting picture back there he has.
Who,
Oh, that's
Brother Salam?
That's a picture that was done by a brother who was a good friend of mine who passed away about 1.5 years ago. He was a major artist back in the early 70s and the 80s. His name is Oliver Johnson. He did that painting for me when, he didn't do it for me, but he did it while we was prisoners in Attica prison back in 1977. And he gave it to me as a gift back then. And just recently, a few years ago, he gave me another painting of an African woman he did when he was in Kenya in 2015. He's one of our famous artists that we have in America, One of his works is at the Washington Museum that was just built a few years ago. I forgot the name of it. One of his paintings is by Oliver Johnson. You can go on YouTube. You can go and look him up. He's very enlightened brother. May Allah be pleased with him.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, sir.
All right. Sister Sharon, we have a little bit of a better understanding for fractions, even though we only touched on it a little bit. Yes, no?
I'm gonna say yes and no.
Okay.
Because the conversation got, went somewhere else. So at some point I was just like, this is not fractions to me. So
I didn't get a chance
inshallah,
to get into
better.
the elements of numerator, denominator.
Yes, sir.
That was where we were going next, but the time goes by so doggone fast.
Yes, sir. Inshallah, next time.
Okay.
And I wanted to make a comment earlier, but I decided to wait. With the interpolated theta, to me, and I always make it comparison to a pile of clothes that need to be folded. And once that pile of clothes, one piece is folded at a time, your mind is sorted out. But it's only with the help of an auditor that you're able to do that unless you're clear. And I don't believe any of us on this line is clear. And as auditors, whether we're new auditors or we're quote unquote seasoned auditors, if we're not practicing the tool and, auditing or straight wiring, and also ourselves being audited or straight wiring, we could harm somebody else, unaware or aware. So just because we have the tool, it doesn't make us better than anybody else who has the tool that's on a different level. It don't make us better. We're all in the same boat.
Yes, ma'am.
And none of us are perfect. Again, repeating, none of us are clear. So we have to keep that in mind. And we may think that we're on one tone level, and we're really not. L. Ron Hubbard said that through the day, we go up and down on a tone level with our thoughts. It could be somebody cut us off driving that could drop us on the tone scale. And also, as auditors, when we're conversating with anybody else, who's another auditor perhaps, or someone who's not, we got to strive to stay in present time and not go too far on our own time track and drag somebody down with us. So with that being said, I appreciate the demo kits that you put together for us, and for me especially, because it's some stuff that I don't understand, but being comfortable enough to say, look, I need help with that, makes me comfortable going through the process to become comfortable in knowing that I know fractions at this point or at whatever point that comes next. So up to this point, it's still a little bit misunderstood, but not too much like before. So all praises due to Allah. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Praise be to Allah. Well said.
And I'll say this also as well. Because my schedule is the way that it is, if anyone has any concepts that they don't understand and you really don't want to wait until Sunday or Wednesday, you can easily send me an email, and I'd be more than willing to go over the data at any time. The way my schedule works, I work a 24-hour shift. I have 3 days off in between. I have no problem taking time out of my schedule to help individuals outside of the normal Sunday, Wednesday that we have scheduled. Just send me an email. Let me know what it is that you need assistance with or help. And I will send you a link, and we will go over that concept until we get all the misunderstoods, the gradients and everything is out, and you have a certain level of mastery. Because for me, that is my purpose. I know for a fact that we have to get everyone at a certain level. And I am more than willing to take time out of my schedule. Just send me an email. Let me know what it is you want to cover. We'll find out the best time to do it. I'll send you the Zoom link and we will go over it until you fully understand it. Does that make sense, family?
Yes, sir. Praise be to Allah.
I have absolutely no problem doing that. My goal is to see when I hear Sister Ani and Sister Tina and different individuals, and I can hear that they've been like Sister Ania, I came across something I wanted to send to you, but you had talked about a couple of weeks ago, you started going into looking at things as far as algebra. Do you remember that conversation?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, when I hear that, that shoots my tone level through the roof. I enjoy hearing some of the questions that the believers offer because it shows, as the minister says, that the diameter of the thinking has increased and the circumference of the activity. But now there's another part in that quote the minister gives us in Torchlight for America. He gives us diameter, he gives us the circumference of our activity, but then he talks about the sphere of our activity. That's the third part of the circle. You have the diameter, the circumference, and then the sphere. That's a cycle of action. And I can hear in the type of questions how individuals are changing. And that's what feeds my spirit. So not to be long-winded, but my schedule is open for the believers that want more data. Just let me know and I'll do what I can to readjust my schedule. Go ahead, Brother Eric.
Yes, I'll be very brief. Bismillah. As Sister Sharon was talking, it reminded me two things. And also the sisters were discussing it before. In our lessons, we were taught to be honest and dependable. And as we approach the science of Dianetics, we are, it was mentioned earlier, we are giving the auditor's code.
Mm-hmm.
And the auditor's code is given to us exactly for that reason, because most of us will not have the ability to be honest, because we always want to change things our way. And we don't care about the damage that can cause. We are giving a technology that was
Did he just freeze or is that just me?
tested and proven. And it makes it difficult. So now it should give us the notion of ethics. And if your ethics is right, that means you are honest. And at the same time, it gives you the notion of aesthetic, because when you do things beautifully right, so everybody can see it. So at that point, we cannot take that teaching to think it is no value. And as you can see, everything that you are showing is right and exact. If there was anything that was not, I did not catch it at that point. So this is why we have to practice what we know perfectly right. And remember the messenger told the minister when he was asking Master Farad Muhammad to teach him about the sun, he said, Master Farad Muhammad was annoyed with that. Go ahead. And in the long run, he started talking about it. He said, well, the sun is very near the center. Okay, now, if this is the case, who's that center? Because the sun is the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. He gave us what he was taught. And the minister is the one who is reflecting that knowledge to us. So he becomes the moon. But the sun is very near the center. That means he's so near to Master Farad Muhammad. That means he's being a reflection of Master Farad Muhammad himself. And now the minister among us become a reflection of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. So we're supposed to be all gods. How are we going to say we're God and then we're not reflecting them? And if we are, as Elwan Abad say, if we are quarreling with the words, we are doing ourselves a disfavor, and we are doing a disfavor also to the whole teaching and doctrine. So I pray Allah bless us all to get ourselves together so that we can do a better job in the near future. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Sister Tina.
Yes, sir. I also want to thank Sister Sharon for this subject, because in reading what you were going to discuss in regards to the fractions, it made me, well, in reading the words from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Our Savior Has Arrived on pages 81 through 83, especially 81, I started seeing formulas. Formulas started coming up in regards to how we are to be changed. And I just started seeing fractions in that, because fractions is a quicker way to subtract, right? I mean, not subtract, I'm sorry, fractions. I can't really explain it right now because it's something I want to study, but I saw something in the study that you are entering in on the fractions as a demo kit, and the words of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in those pages. You know, so I just wanted to say that, if it makes any sense.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
There's a saying that when you change the way you look at things, the things at which you look at begin to change. And the whole process of what we're doing is changing the way that we think and changing our viewpoint. And by changing our viewpoint, what takes place is everything that we apply our mind to begins to evolve at a faster rate now. So, Sister Tina, that makes to me at least, it makes perfect sense.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead, Sister Denise.
Yes, sir. I wanted to thank you because I often wonder about how do I bring people up on the scale from where they are, and how the chart tells you what to do if they are here at this level, that this is what you use. And I was wondering where was that? you know how you can think that it's all in a book and it's right there on the chart of attitudes. Am I saying it right?
It's the Hubbard chart of human evaluation and Dianetic process.
Right. So you'll see where they are, and now this is what you use to take them to that. And I just want to thank you, because it's like, I know we've been talking about it, but it's an aha moment for me. Like, that's where you go to get that. So thank you, beloved.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I understood it today. Today I understood that evaluation chart. So I thank you.
Well, praise be to Allah. Go ahead, Sister Ania.
Yes, sir. And I thank you as well. I thank you for taking the time to, you sacrificing your time to put all of these classes together for us, to explain points to us individually and collectively, volunteering to tutor us individually if we're making that available to us. As Sister Tina spoke about fractions, I thought about a conversation I had with my husband yesterday, which dealt with a prior job that he had working for a company that dealt with atoms. And he was explaining to me part of what he used to have to do, which dealt with, he didn't know it at the time because this was before he became registered in the nation. or in his early years in the nation, but as he looks back on it now, it had to do with the splitting of atoms. And so what Sister Tina was just talking about, the breaking down the fractions, that could be a subject for a later class, more as we become more advanced in understanding fractions, is looking at fractions as it relates to the splitting of atoms.
Ooh. Okay.
Well,
I'll write that one down. All right.
Yes, sir. And then also in the chat, Sister Sultana asked the question, how and where do we get the auditor's code?
What
I think it's in the book.
is it in book one? It's in book one.
I believe it is.
It's in book one.
It should be towards the end of the book, if I'm not mistaken, towards the last chapters, the auditor's code.
Chapter, book 3, chapter 3 in
Okay.
book 1.
Book 3, chapter 3. Do you have a page number for that?
Not off the top of my head.
Let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
So,
At least we have book 3, chapter 3. Okay, that should be. Okay, book 3, chapter 3 is. That is page 213. That gives us the auditor's role. And that gives us the auditor code, which is found on page 218. So that's Dianetics book 1, page 218. That's the actual facts. Thank you. Sister Tina.
Did you say Sister Tina?
I see your hand up.
Oh, I thought I put it down. Oh, sorry about that.
Anyone else? Sister Sharon, I did see your hand pop up when you came back in, I think. Did I? Yes, no?
Yes, but I don't recall what I was gonna say.
Okay.
So, yes, sir.
Anyone else, family? Otherwise, we will go ahead and close it out. All right. Let's go ahead and close out in prayer. Inshallah, we will see each other on Sunday, the 11th, 6 p.m. Topic to be announced. And with that, family, let's go ahead and close out in prayer. Attention prayer. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. All praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. Master of the day of judgment in which we now live, the alone that we serve, thine aid that we seek. Please, Allah, guide us on the straight path, the path upon whom thou hast bestowed favors, not the path upon whom thy wrath is brought down, nor of those who go astray after hearing thy teaching. Ameen.
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 Assalamu alaikum, family.
Walaikum salam. Have a blessed day, everyone.
Likewise.
Alaikum salam.
Brother Luke, I'm gonna give you a call in a few minutes.
All right, yes, sir.
Alhamdulillah. Where's my, oh, there it is.